Okay, this time we're going to show you how to do the valve cover gasket replacement on the 2015 Chrysler 200C 2.4 liter engine. Okay, we're going to start by pulling up on this beauty cover on all four corners. Pops right off for it. Next thing I'm going to do, get this hose clamp loosened on this air box. And I also need to loosen it down here at the throttle body. So this intake tube is also held on here by a 10 mil. Now the only thing left is a plastic push clip right there, which I'll pry out. Just like that. You got one electrical plug right here. Pretty standard. Now let's just take off the entire intake tube. Now we got a whole electrical harness here. Okay, so this has got a round end of a zip tie, like a screw tie, that just gets pushed down on this threaded stud. So I'll go ahead and pull it off just like that. Yep, good. That looks good. I will unplug this sensor. There we go. Unplug this sensor. Okay, so this one has a safety catch on it. You got to pry that up first. Then you can squeeze and unplug it. So you got to pry up on this little red tab that's here. You'll be able to see it. Pry upwards on the red tab. Now you can squeeze the plug like normal and unplug it. So what I'm hoping I can do here with this harness is I'm hoping I can just lift it up out of the way so I can pull this valve cover properly. This silver harness continues down in the direction of the alternator. I'm not sure if it goes to the alternator now, but it goes that direction. So there's a plastic clip here again. Clips it into a little attachment off the side of the block. You just pry that baby out. Clip broke, but I can use a zip tie on Reassembly to resecure that. So now, looks to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Look like Phillips head plastic clips. So I'm going to try and use the Phillips head screwdriver to release those first. Nice. So the next thing I'll do here is I'll pull back on the red clip and then push down to disconnect all these ignition coils. See if I can pop those clips out the last little bit here. Yep. Just a little bit gently underneath those Phillips heads. That one broke on me. But the car's got over 100,000 miles, so some of that's to be expected. That's okay. So now I have this harness loose enough, I think, that I could get it out of the way of working on that. And then I'll gently pry up again on these Phillips head clips here. Try and get those the rest of the way out. This one also is not being super cooperative. There we go. So let's see now. Let's sure put a lot of crap in the way here. I'm gonna try and disconnect this tube here. See if that'll help me get a little more clearance to work with here. So with this harness loose and that harness loose, and I've got it kind of held back a little bit with my pry bar, my panel tool. I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the middle, 8, and I can assume there's 6 on the back, so it's 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15 is on the corner. It's hidden because this hose, the little hose that I disconnected, actually clips onto the top of that last one. I count 15 bolts and or nuts that gotta come off. So before we get any deeper here, this plastic spoke that holds on the beauty cover is on the top of one of these studs. So I'm going to remove that next. That's a 12 mil. Hopefully that'll just thread off. There we go. So now what that gives us the ability to do is lift that up and off and tuck that out of the way too, so that won't be a factor anymore in anything. Now what should be the last thing before I get to those bolts around the perimeter is I'll pull these ignition coils. I'll tuck them up here in order the way they came off. And then deep down in here we have 4 more 8mm bolts. I have a lot of oil in those little sections there. A lot of oil collecting. So this valve cover gasket goes all the way around the perimeter. Then there's also O-rings underneath each of these nuts or bolts. Then there's also spark plug tube seals. And they're almost like a weird shaped figure 8. They have a large circle, then a small circle goes around these bolts here. All 4 of these bolts are seeping oil, which tells me that the real problem here is that I've got a leak around these spark plug tube seals. But the only way to do that is to do the whole thing. So I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so because I couldn't get a rating for these at the dealer, I'm going to use my digital torque wrench from Snap-on. I'm going to go in reverse, and I'll be able to recall the max torque it takes to release these. And I'll do a couple of them, maybe 3 across this side, maybe 1 in the middle. And I can use those readings to get an idea what the torque should be when I put it back on. And what I'll probably do is I'll probably put the new torque slightly lower than whatever I read off of these, because these might be a little bit gummed up, might be a little sticky. So I don't want to do it to the exact torque of this because it could be a little bit too much. But this will give me an idea where to start. 4 in here are all bolts. So that got caught in the rubber gasket actually right there. So you just got to work that out to get that out. So I'm going to see what I can do about just prying this up. There we go. Okay, so this is what we're looking at with the valve cover removed now. Notice that right here, there'll be some RTV. I'm going to use something called the right stuff. And then as this makes a transition upward, you'll also add some right down in that area where they did. Okay? All these flat spots don't need any RTV or anything. This spot here you need a little bit because the timing cover meets the head right there. You can see the orange RTV between the timing cover and the head. So you got to put a little bit there. Again, this is flat all the way over to here. No RTV needed there. As this makes a transition over the cam, you got to add some RTV here at this transition. And then also back here where it makes that transition. Okay, then it's flat backwards and just around the corner. Then once again, it goes uphill again. So you see how this isn't attached? But down here it is in this little spot here. That's another spot we're going to need to put some RTV. Okay, so down here in the valley, you've also got your spark plug tube seals. Okay, around every one of these screws is where I was getting oil leakage. So you can peel those off, 4 of them. Peel this off. We're going to clean this probably with some rags and some type of degreaser, maybe alcohol, maybe acetone, not exactly sure yet. But we're going to get right down to bare clean metal again. Then what we'll do is we'll install the new valve cover gasket in the bottom of the valve cover. We'll apply RTV at all the points I just mentioned. We'll insert these spark plug tube seals up in the valve cover also. so that they'll be ready to go. And we want to make sure that the product that I got is a 1-minute RTV sealant. So we're basically going to want to put the sealant on and then be ready to drop the valve cover right on, press it down and let it set. And then we'll go back through and we'll put all the bolts back in and nuts back in, finger tight, very gently finger tight to start with. So that's what we're looking at. And I'm going to do some cleanup now. I'll show you the valve cover now. This is the underside of the valve cover. The gasket's going to go in this valley, in this groove, like I said. The new spark plug tube seals can go in here, like we talked about. We're going to clean all this up with some type of solvent. Wipe it out so it's nice and dry. And then I'll show you what the reassembly is going to look like. Okay, so I've got all the surfaces clean now. I used just a little bit of solvent. I used it sparingly because you don't want to get that solvent really in the oil pan. So just use that sparingly. And then I wiped it clean with some blue shop towels. So now you got to look at this old RTV, okay? You got to get this off, but you don't want to gouge this top of the cylinder head. So you can usually work it nice and easy with a screwdriver, or if you have a razor blade scraper. I have one, but there's a couple areas here that don't really lend itself too well to that scraper because of little tight spots. So I'm just gently working this off. Nice and easy, trying not to gouge the cylinder head because everything here is aluminum. So just taking it nice and easy. Might be able to just pull that off now. Okay. Then I got a little Scotch-Brite pad. I'm going to try and scrape the rest of that dried up RTV off. Brief shot of degreaser solvent. Clean the area. Okay, so do that with all the RTV areas. Get all the old RTV off everywhere it is, because you're going to need to reapply fresh RTV like I described. Okay, so I've got the valve cover all cleaned up nice, and I've have the new valve cover gasket installed. So it's got a ridge like this, okay? That's the side that's going to get tucked into the valve cover. You have to look at this a little bit to figure out which way it goes, because there's a couple of downs and ups here, okay? But there are some index marks that can help you, okay? So around this corner, you got this little rectangle here. That matches extra groove in this valve cover. Got another one over here. So if you kind of get lost a little bit, you want to look for that one, for those things. And also over here around the cam, you can see these extra notches where the gasket gets a little bit wider. And that can show you what you should be doing. Spark plug tube seals go in same way. They make sense. Just make sure they're fully seated, all of them. So now I have the project of replacing all 19 O-rings. Okay, I've already replaced this one on this that bolt. So basically what I found easiest is to take some pliers, pull this off, the old one, because they're a little difficult to get off. The new one pushes on easier, so I'll show you what I'm doing for that. So on the old one, you can get that rubber loose. It's tough to get that over that. I think it's because these are dried and maybe shrunk just a little bit. So I just took a pair of pliers, grabbed the hole of the O-ring real tight, and pulled it till I start to get over that lip. And just work it to get it off, okay? And then pay attention to the orientation because these go on two different ways, okay? So this is the way it should go on. It should have this higher sort of profile there, goes towards that. So this pushes on pretty easy now because it's softer. And now it's on, okay? So that's what the longer ones, they have the nut heads with the studs. This is the bolt. Same concept though, right? We're just going to grab it, peel it over that spot, and then install the new one in the exact same orientation. And it squeezes over nice. Okay? So I gotta do that apparently 16 more times, but you get the idea. So I'm gonna prep those, and then we'll have to RTV the spots on the head that I showed you before. And then we'll have to pop this valve cover on very quickly because I only have about 5 minutes of working time with the gasket stuff that I bought. I use something called the right stuff. They call it a 1 minute gasket, but the instructions tell me that I have to have the valve cover back on in 5 minutes. The nice stuff about this particular product is it tells me that I can put the engine right back in service. You know, so by the time I press the valve cover on, tighten all the bolts by hand, then go around and maybe half torque them, then full torque them, that'll have plenty of time to properly set. And then once I'm done tightening everything and reassembling the system, then I'll be able to start the engine up and drive it. So I'll keep going. I'll show you our next step after this. Okay, so now with all that applied, we'll bring the valve cover back in. Make sure it gets set down, straight down, to properly squash the RTV. Make sure it's lining up with the bolt holes. So at this stage, I'm stopping as soon as I feel any resistance at all. Very gently finger tight those. I made myself a diagram, which I recommend for you too, about where the studs go. Again, everything we're doing at this stage is very gentle, very gentle. Can't afford to warp or crack this valve cover. And that's what you risk if you go tight on any of these fasteners at this stage. Just has to be super gentle until they're all making contact with the valve cover and causing the valve cover to make contact with the head. Okay, so now all of them are snugged the first time. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to touch these again in the center, gently. What you'll probably find is now that you've put them all snugged, these are going to be loose again, just a little bit. So I'd go again, make these finger tight, and then we're going to alternate, okay? One from here, cross it here, cross it here, cross it here, and you go up here, then go back, and get the ones that we missed. Until, and this is supposed to be slowly and methodical. This could take you, 2 or 3 different steps to get them all snugged, finger tight, to the point where we're ready to actually torque them. So this is tedious, but it's important. Okay, these are already looser than they were when I started. So basically what we're doing here is we're slowly squeezing this gasket and consistently squeezing the gasket by applying consistent pressure from the inside out. Okay, so now I'll do this corner, I guess. There is a, I'm sure there's an order from Chrysler that these are supposed to be done in. I don't have that data. So I'm using a general principle that you have to alternate sides when you're tightening down something like this. Okay, I'll check these one more time. Make sure they're all snugged all the way down. That I can feel. That fastener's bottomed out. It's not torqued yet, but I can feel when they're actually all the way in, and it's going to take a drastic amount of torque to force it any tighter. Okay, they're all bottomed out with minimal torque. I remember earlier I was saying I was going to use 85 inch-pounds. I found some information online that describes that the proper rating is 90 inch-pounds. Now, if I had used 85 inch-pounds, probably would have been fine. But since I found a resource that's telling me it's 90, we're going to go ahead and do the 90. But you can see how close I was just using the torque wrench reverse I mean, I got within 5 inch-pounds, which I think is pretty good. So, anyway, now we'll start torquing these. Go around one last time, just to make sure we're still on. Yep. Okay. With those all torqued, the hard stuff's done. You can reassemble all of this in reverse, the order that we took it apart. Hopefully this helps you get through yours. Thanks for watching.